The distant thunder of hooves echoed across the dusty plains of Silver Creek, Texas, as Olivia Greenwood clutched the tattered letter that had sealed her fate. The year was 1876, and at 20 years old, she found herself being paraded onto an auction block, her father's gambling debts having reduced her to nothing more than property to be sold to the highest bidder. $500 for the hand of Miss Greenwood, called Thaddeus Jenkins, the auctioneer, with a voice that carried across the crowd gathered in the town square. His fingers dug into Olivia's wrist as tears streamed down her face, her white wedding dress hastily sewn by her mother before consumption had taken her, now stained with the dust of humiliation. Olivia scanned the crowd desperately. The townspeople averted their eyes, some in shame, others in morbid curiosity. She recognized most faces. She'd grown up with these people, taught some of their children in the schoolhouse. Now they watched as she was sold like cattle. "Do I hear 600? Jenkins called, his breath hot against her ear as he squeezed her wrist tighter, making her whimper. 600, called a voice from the back. Bartholomew Reed, the bank owner who had foreclosed on 3 farms that season. His eyes raked over her form with undisguised hunger. 700! This from Josiah Turner, the saloon owner, a man with 4 former wives, none of whose fates were discussed in polite company. Olivia's knees weakened. These men were bidding on her future, her body, her life. She closed her eyes, unable to bear the sight of the auction block any longer. Her father had fled town 3 days ago, leaving nothing but debts and a note apologizing for what would become of her. $800, Jenkins called, excitement in his voice at the climbing price. $1,000. A new voice cut through the crowd, causing a ripple of murmurs. The crowd parted, and Olivia opened her eyes to see a tall figure striding forward. Owen Grayson, his boots kicking up dust, his hat pulled low over his eyes. She knew him only by reputation, a cattle driver who had recently purchased land outside of town. She had seen him once or twice at church, always sitting alone, never speaking to anyone. 1,000 going once, Jenkins called, looking around nervously. This was more money than anyone had expected for the schoolteacher's daughter. 1,500, Bartholomew Reed's face had turned crimson with rage. 2,000, Owen Grayson said calmly, stepping closer to the auction block. A hush fell over the crowd. $2,000 was more than most of them would see in years. Reed stepped forward, his face contorted in fury. You can't just ride into town and— 3,000, Owen interrupted, his voice unwavering. Jenkins's eyes widened as he looked between the two men. 3,000 going once, going twice. She's mine, Reed snarled, reaching for Olivia. Sold, Jenkins declared, gripping Olivia's wrist tighter and pulling her toward Reed. I believe you've made a mistake. Owen Grayson stepped onto the auction block, his spurs jingling. His hand went to the revolver at his hip, though he didn't draw it. I paid more. Mr. Reed here is a respected businessman, Jenkins stammered, still clutching Olivia's wrist. Perhaps we should let her go, Owen said, his voice dropping dangerously low. I've paid enough. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Jenkins's grip on Olivia's wrist slowly loosened. She pulled her hand away, rubbing the red marks left by his fingers. This ain't over, cowboy, Reed spat, backing away. Nobody crosses me in this town. Owen didn't acknowledge the threat. Instead, he turned to Olivia, removing his coat and draping it over her shoulders. Miss Greenwood, I believe we have some paperwork to attend to. Olivia looked up at him, unable to speak through her tears. Was she simply trading one master for another? What did this stranger want from her? I have a horse waiting, he said quietly, for her ears alone. You don't have to stay here. 10 minutes later, Olivia found herself riding behind Owen Grayson. Her wedding dress hiked up around her knees as they galloped away from Silver Creek. The wind dried her tears as they rode in silence, the town shrinking behind them. After an hour of hard riding, they approached a modest ranch house nestled against a backdrop of cottonwood trees. A creek bubbled nearby, and cattle grazed in the distance. It was beautiful in its simplicity, nothing like the grand house Reed would have imprisoned her in. Owen helped her dismount, keeping a respectful distance. "This is my home," he said, gesturing to the house. "You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow I'll take you wherever you want to go." Olivia stared at him in confusion. "I don't understand." "I have no intention of holding you to a marriage, Miss Greenwood," he said, leading his horse to the water trough. "I simply couldn't stand by and watch what was happening to you." "You spent $3,000 to save a stranger?" Her voice cracked with disbelief. Owen's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she noticed their color a deep blue, like the sky after a storm. Some things are worth more than money. That night, Owen gave her his bedroom and slept in the barn. Olivia lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the day's events. When exhaustion finally claimed her, she slept without dreaming. The smell of coffee woke her the next morning. She found a simple dress laid out for her, nothing fancy, but clean and well made. When she emerged from the bedroom, Owen was at the stove, frying bacon. "Good morning," he said, not turning around. "I hope you slept well." "Better than I expected to," she admitted, sitting at the table. "Mr. Grayson." "Owen," he corrected, placing a plate in front of her. "Owen," she repeated, the name feeling strange on her tongue. "I still don't understand why you did what you did." He sat across from her, his own plate untouched. "I came to America 5 years ago from Scotland. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and a dream of open spaces." He took a sip of coffee. "When I saw you on that auction block, it reminded me of things I've seen people treated as property. I couldn't stand by." "And now?" she asked, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "What happens now?" "That depends on you," he said simply. "I meant what I said. I'll take you wherever you want to go. I have connections in Austin, Denver, even San Francisco if you want to start fresh." Olivia looked down at her plate, overwhelmed by his kindness. "I have no money, no family." "You have $3,000, Owen said. "It's yours." She looked up sharply. "But you paid—" "I paid to set you free, not to own you," he interrupted. "The money is yours to do with as you please." Tears welled in her eyes again, but for a different reason this time. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," he replied, finally starting to eat his breakfast. "Just know that you're safe here for as long as you need." In the days that followed, Olivia learned more about Owen Grayson. He had built his ranch from nothing, working cattle drives across Texas until he'd saved enough to buy his land. He was quiet, but not unkind, spending his days tending to his small herd of cattle and repairing fences. Olivia found herself falling into a routine. She kept the house, cooked meals, and even started a small garden behind the kitchen. When Owen offered to take her to Austin at the end of the week, she surprised herself by asking for more time. "I'm not ready yet," she explained, kneading bread dough with flour-covered hands. "I need to think about where I want to go, what I want to do." Owen nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Take all the time you need." As April turned to May, the wildflowers bloomed across the prairie, painting the landscape in vibrant colors. Olivia found herself watching Owen as he worked, admiring the strength in his shoulders, the gentleness with which he treated his horses. He never asked anything of her, never even hinted at expecting anything in return for his kindness. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Olivia finally asked the question that had been on her mind. "Don't you get lonely out here?" Owen considered her question, taking his time as he always did before speaking. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I've learned to find peace in solitude." "Is that why you never married?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. A shadow crossed his face. "I was engaged once, back in Scotland. She died of fever before we could wed." He looked out at the horizon. After that, I needed to start fresh somewhere new. Olivia's heart ached for him. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago, he said, though the pain in his voice suggested otherwise. What about you? Was there someone before? He trailed off, not wanting to mention the auction. No, she said softly. My father was strict, and then when Mother fell ill, I was too busy caring for her to think about courting. They sat in companionable silence as the stars began to appear. Something was shifting between them, something fragile and unspoken. The peace of their routine was shattered 3 days later when Bartholomew Reed and 4 men rode onto Owen's property. Olivia was hanging laundry when she heard the horses approaching. She rushed inside to find Owen loading his rifle. Stay in the house, he told her, his voice calm but firm. Owen, please don't. I won't start trouble, but I'll finish it if I have to, he said, checking his revolver before tucking it into his holster. Stay inside. Olivia watched from the window as Owen stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand but pointed at the ground. Reed dismounted, his men remaining on their horses, hands hovering near their weapons. You stole something that belongs to me, Grayson, Reed called, walking toward the house. Nothing here belongs to you, Owen replied. State your business and move on. Reed's face twisted into an ugly sneer. The girl. I've come for the girl. He looked past Owen to the window where Olivia stood. She was promised to me. She was never yours to claim, Owen said, his stance unwavering. She's a free woman, making her own choices. Reed laughed, a harsh sound that made Olivia's skin crawl. You paid good money for her. Don't tell me you haven't been enjoying your purchase. Owen's grip on his rifle tightened, but his voice remained steady. I suggest you leave, Reed, before this goes somewhere neither of us wants it to. You think you can stand against me? Reed gestured to his men. I own Silver Creek, 1 word from me, and nobody will sell to you, buy from you, or even acknowledge your existence. I don't need Silver Creek, Owen replied, and neither does Miss Greenwood. Reed's face darkened. She's coming with me, one way or another. No, she isn't. The standoff continued for several tense moments. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest as she watched, terrified that blood would be shed because of her. Finally, Reed spat on the ground. This isn't over, Grayson. Nobody takes what's mine. He mounted his horse and turned to leave, but not before calling out, Sleep with one eye open, cowboy. After they rode away, Owen came back inside, his face grim. Pack your things, he said. It's not safe for you here anymore. Where will we go? Olivia asked, already moving to gather her few belongings. Owen paused at her use of we, but didn't correct her. I have a friend with a ranch near the New Mexico territory. We can stay there until Reed loses interest. They left at dawn the next day, traveling light and fast. Owen led them through back trails and creek beds to avoid leaving an easy trail. Olivia rode her own horse, now a gentle mare Owen had been training. They spoke little during the day, both scanning the horizon for pursuers. At night, they made camp in sheltered locations. Owen taught Olivia to build a fire, to read tracks, to shoot his spare revolver. Just in case, he said, showing her how to hold the weapon steady. On their 3rd night on the trail, as they sat beside the fire, Olivia found the courage to ask what had been on her mind. Why are you risking so much for me? Reed could take everything from you. Owen looked into the flames for a long moment before answering. When I was a boy, I watched my mother suffer at the hands of a cruel man, my father. I swore I would never stand by while someone vulnerable was hurt. He met her gaze. Besides, I've grown fond of your company. Olivia's cheeks warmed, and it wasn't from the fire. I've grown fond of yours as well. Something changed between them that night. As they continued their journey west, they began to share more of themselves. Olivia told him about her dreams of having her own school someday. Owen spoke of expanding his ranch, breeding better cattle. They reached Owen's friend's ranch a week later. Miguel Alvarez welcomed them with open arms, no questions asked. His ranch was larger than Owen's, with a spacious adobe house that had plenty of room for guests. "Stay as long as you need, my friend," Miguel told Owen, clapping him on the shoulder. To Olivia, he bowed slightly. "My home is your home, señorita." They fell into a new routine at the Alvarez ranch. Owen helped Miguel with his cattle, while Olivia assisted Miguel's wife Elena with the household and their 4 children. Elena, a warm-hearted woman in her 30s, quickly became a friend to Olivia. "Owen has never brought a woman here before," Elena commented one afternoon as they kneaded dough together. "He must care for you very much." Olivia blushed. "It's not like that. He saved me from a terrible situation, that's all." Elena's knowing smile said she thought otherwise. "I see the way he looks at you when you are not watching. And the way you look at him." Olivia couldn't deny it to herself any longer. Somewhere between the auction block and this peaceful kitchen, she had fallen in love with Owen Grayson. His quiet strength, his unwavering integrity, his gentle heart, everything about him called to her. But did he feel the same? He had been clear from the beginning that he wanted her to be free, to make her own choices. Perhaps his kindness was just that kindness, not love. As June gave way to July, word reached them through Miguel's contacts that Reed was still searching, offering rewards for information about their whereabouts. Owen grew increasingly worried, often standing on the porch late into the night, scanning the darkness. One evening, Olivia joined him there, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the cool night air. "You should come inside," she said softly. "You need rest." "I can't risk them finding us," he replied, his eyes still on the horizon. "Finding you?" Olivia stood beside him, their shoulders almost touching. "I'm not afraid when I'm with you." Owen turned to look at her, moonlight casting shadows across his face. "You should be. Reed is a dangerous man." "So are you when protecting something you care about," she said, meeting his gaze. "Olivia," he began, then stopped, struggling with words that wouldn't come. She took a chance, reaching out to touch his hand. "I've made my choice, Owen. If you'll have me, I want to stay with you. Not because you rescued me, not because I owe you, but because She hesitated, heart pounding. "Because I love you." Owen's breath caught. Slowly, he turned his hand to clasp hers. "I told myself I was doing the honorable thing, giving you your freedom, not presuming to." He shook his head. "The truth is, I've loved you since that first morning when you came to breakfast in that borrowed dress, your head held high despite everything you'd been through." Olivia stepped closer, tilting her face up to his. "Then stop being so honorable and kiss me." Under the vast New Mexico sky, Owen Grayson finally did just that, pulling her gently into his arms and pressing his lips to hers. It was a kiss of promise, of protection, of a future neither had dared to imagine until now. Their peaceful interlude couldn't last forever. 2 weeks later, a rider brought news that Reed and a dozen men were heading their way, having finally picked up their trail. "You need to go," Miguel told them, already preparing horses and supplies. "There's a stage in Santa Fe that can take you to California. Reed won't follow you that far." "I can't ask you to risk your family for us," Owen protested. Miguel waved away his concern. "You would do the same for me. Now go before they arrive." They left at midnight, with tearful goodbyes to Elena and the children. Miguel provided them with fresh horses and enough supplies to reach Santa Fe. As they rode away from the safety of the ranch, Olivia felt a mixture of fear and determination. "We'll start over in California," Owen said as they rode side by side. "Build something new together." Olivia smiled despite her worry. "As long as we're together, I don't care where we go." They rode hard for 2 days, stopping only when necessary to rest the horses. On the 3rd day, as they crossed a shallow river, they heard the sound they had been dreading. Hoofbeats, many of them approaching fast. "They've found us," Owen said grimly, scanning their surroundings. "There's a ridge up ahead. We can make a stand there." They urged their horses up the rocky incline. reaching a defensible position just as Reed and his men appeared at the river below. Owen helped Olivia dismount, then unloaded his rifle and ammunition. "Take this," he said, handing her his revolver. "If anything happens to me, don't let them take you alive." Olivia took the weapon, her hand steady. "Nothing is going to happen to you. We're going to get through this together." Reed's voice called up to them from below. "Come out, Grayson! Bring the girl, and maybe I'll let you live." Owen positioned himself behind a boulder. "Go back to Texas, Reed. This ends now." "Oh, it ends all right," Reed shouted back. "Boys, bring 'em down." Gunfire erupted from below, bullets ricocheting off the rocks around them. Owen returned fire, his shots measured and precise. 2 of Reed's men fell from their horses, while the others scattered for cover. Olivia crouched behind Owen, loading his spare rifle as he had taught her. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself to focus on the task. When Owen ducked down to reload, she handed him the fresh weapon. "You're a natural," he said with a tight smile before rising to fire again. The gun battle continued, neither side gaining an advantage. Olivia knew they were outnumbered, but their position gave them the upper hand for now. Still, it couldn't last forever. Their ammunition was limited, and Reed's men were slowly working their way up the ridge. "Owen," she said during a lull in the firing, "we need to find another way out." He nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. "There's a trail on the other side of this ridge, if we can hold them off long enough to reach the horses." A bullet struck the rock inches from Olivia's head, showering her with stone fragments. She gasped, ducking lower. "That's it," Owen growled, his face hardening with resolve. "Stay here." Before she could stop him, he moved to a new position and began firing rapidly, forcing Reed's men to take cover. In the confusion, he sprinted down the side of the ridge toward the closest gunman. Olivia watched in horror as Owen tackled the man, wrestling for his weapon. They struggled briefly before Owen gained the upper hand, knocking the man unconscious with the butt of his rifle. Using the momentum, Owen continued down the ridge, firing as he went. His unexpected charge threw Reed's men into confusion. 2 more fell to his bullets, while others retreated toward the river. Reed himself appeared from behind a boulder, leveling his pistol at Owen. "Die, you Scottish bastard!" Olivia didn't think. Didn't hesitate. She stood, aimed the revolver as Owen had taught her, and fired. The recoil nearly knocked her down, but her aim was true. Reed staggered, clutching his shoulder, his shot going wild. Owen seized the moment, closing the distance between them and delivering a powerful right hook that sent Reed crashing to the ground. He kicked Reed's gun away and stood over him, rifle aimed at his heart. "It's over, Reed," Owen said, his voice deadly calm. "Call off your men, or the next bullet goes through your skull." Blood seeping through his fingers, Reed glared up at Owen with hatred in his eyes, but he wasn't a fool. "Stand down," he called to his remaining men. "Stand down." The gunfire ceased. In the sudden silence, Olivia could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She made her way down to Owen, revolver still gripped tightly in her hand. "You won't get away with this," Reed spat, his face pale from pain and fury. "I have friends in high places." "So do I," came a new voice. A group of riders appeared from the east, led by a man wearing a silver star on his chest. "U.S. Marshal James Cooper," he announced, dismounting. "Miguel Alvarez sent word that Bartholomew Reed was causing trouble again." Relief washed over Olivia as the marshal and his deputies took control of the situation. Reed and his surviving men were disarmed and bound for transport to Santa Fe to face charges of attempted murder and other crimes the marshal seemed all too eager to enumerate. "Miguel mentioned you were heading to California," Marshal Cooper said to Owen as his deputies tended to Reed's wound. "Still planning on that?" Owen looked at Olivia, a question in his eyes. She stepped closer to him, linking her arm through his. "We are," she answered for both of them. "Then you'll want this," Cooper said, handing Owen an envelope. "Telegram came for you at Miguel's place, something about a ranch for sale near Sacramento." Owen opened the envelope, reading the message with widening eyes. "My cousin in Scotland passed away," he said quietly. He left me an inheritance. Enough to buy that land in California and then some. Olivia squeezed his arm. It seems the future is calling us west. 3 weeks later, they stood together on the deck of a ship leaving San Francisco Bay, headed north to their new home. They had been married that morning in a simple ceremony, with Marshall Cooper and his wife as witnesses. Olivia wore a blue dress instead of white, a choice that felt right for their new beginning. "Mrs. Grayson," Owen said, wrapping his arm around her waist as they watched the city recede, "are you happy with your choice?" Olivia leaned into his embrace, remembering the auction block that had brought them together. What had seemed like the end of her life had become its true beginning. "More than happy," she replied, turning to kiss him. "I'm free, and I chose you." 5 years later. The Grayson Ranch, north of Sacramento, had become one of the most prosperous in the region. Their cattle were prized for their quality, and the apple orchards Olivia had insisted on planting were beginning to yield fruit. On a warm autumn evening, Owen sat on the porch of their home, watching his wife rock their 2-year-old daughter Emma to sleep. Their 4-year-old son Thomas played with wooden horses at his feet. "Papa," Thomas said, looking up with eyes as blue as Owen's own, "tell the story again." Owen smiled, knowing which story his son wanted. "Well, once upon a time, there was a brave schoolteacher who was in trouble." "And a cowboy saved her," Thomas interrupted excitedly. "That's right," Owen continued, catching Olivia's loving gaze over their daughter's head. "A cowboy said, 'Let her go. I've paid enough.' But what he didn't know was that he hadn't paid nearly enough, because what he got in return was worth more than all the gold in California." Olivia's eyes shimmered with tears of happiness as she mouthed the words, "I love you," to the man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved. As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Owen Grayson thanked whatever fate or providence had led him to that auction in Silver Creek. What had begun as an act of compassion had given him a love greater than he had ever imagined possible, and a family he would protect with his last breath. And Olivia, watching her husband and son together, silently blessed the day when an auctioneer had gripped her wrist and a cowboy had set her free, not just from bondage, but to love.